Always a pleasure to be with you people. And so today we have a topic which was chosen based on one article that I wrote many years ago. It said, what does a Buddhist monk do about pests in the garden? Well, first disclaimer, I'm not a Buddhist monk, but I'm a monk. And we follow some of the basic things which Buddhism is known for, especially this idea of non-injury and non-harming. So, but it's not such an easy question as we're going to go and see. It's a little bit, not complicated, but it's nuanced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my my presentation, and then we'll go through it, and we'll have a chance to see what is what. Okay. Okay, then 1 second, I'm going to set up the slideshow. Okay, there we are. Okay, so this is the topic that's been laid out, and now we're gonna look at it, because as we're gonna find out, it's not always the same answer, even for a Buddhist monk or any monk or someone who's following certain principles. So this is really a question of Ahimsa. So Ahimsa is one of the fundaments of yoga, and also has its place in Buddhism, in Jainism, other ways of life. And the main idea is that we should not inflict harm on others by thought, word, or deed. We shouldn't inflict harm. And one also it's often been equated with non-violence, but that the term ahimsa doesn't mean, himsa means harmfulness, and means without. So we should go about our life without harming others. So, but how do we apply this in our relationship with the living beings? So I believe we're going to first look at our relation with the animal kingdom, and this will give us an insight, and then we can also even export that idea to humans. So in the animal kingdom, now I'm going to introduce some things which people may not have ever heard about before, but it's very simple, and I think it clarifies a lot. There are 3 kinds of animals. This is according to my teacher, Sri Anandamurti, Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar. There are 3 kinds of animals. One kind he calls the born friends. The others are called neutral. And then there are some that are born enemies. So let's look at them, see what they are. So the born friends, he defines, maybe some people will disagree or not, but are these domestic animals, the cows, the goats, the sheep. And according to the yogic concept, if you're following, this ahimsa and really applying it, that when there are developed beings, we should choose our food from where the consciousness is less developed. Now, it is a fact. In fact, it's the fact of nature. All life lives on other life. Jiva jivasya bhojanam is what the yogis say. So all life lives on other life. It's built into the whole system. So even if you pull a radish out of the ground, it's a living being. But the question is, if we can subsist on that being where the consciousness is really not developed, even the radish doesn't even have much of a feel of I exist, or it doesn't have that as a developed feeling. So if we can subsist on that, why should we kill a higher being? This is the idea. So these born friends, we shouldn't kill them if we can get by. If all the plants die and then we can. But even the founder of the system says, okay, that's true, but I personally will not follow that. I will not follow the gradation list. but you can, if in certain kinds of times of emergency, it may be possible. But then also well, we'll get to that later too. We'll get to that later because we can go even higher than the cow, but we won't right now. So then that's the born friends. Don't kill them. Then we have neutral animals. So what? And this rabbit looks like he's guilty of something. It's a mugshot of the rabbit. He was caught stealing a carrot or something. But in general, these neutral animals, they exist all around us in nature, and they really are not harming us. Normally, we'll get into when it's not normal. Rabbits, the deer, the monkey, field mouse, there's a bird flying over you right now, the fish swimming in the pond, little fishes in the pond. So these neutral animals, we should not, we shouldn't leave them alone, let them be, okay? Now, then we come to another class of animals, which he calls the born enemies. Jata Shatru, they call them in Sanskrit. So, well, you can imagine them, rattlesnake, scorpion, and mosquito. In fact, the mosquito is actually the most deadly of all of these animals. One time I was in a zoo and they were showing like the most deadly animals. And then they said, now we're going to show you the most lethal animal of the whole planet. Then you walk in and there's a mirror, because the humans we also do our share of carnage. But generally these are the enemies. And another one of the animals that takes out a lot of humans, you may not know this, is the hippopotamus. Although the Cincinnati Zoo has a very photogenic hippopotamus named Fiona, and she's very kind and nice, but in general, in nature, they can be very ferocious. So some of these animals can really be troublesome for humans. But now the question is what to do. So never kill the born friend if other food is available. Now, neutral animals can become enemies if they eat your crops. Like there are certain edibles which will devastate. And if you're dependent on that crop, that means it's a question of existence, either you or that animal, and then you have to defend yourself. Like I knew one monk, even he was farming in Poland, and he had a whole field of potatoes. He said, yeah, these wild boars they can take out a whole row of potatoes, and if you depend on that, then you have to also maybe put out a dog, or you can shoot the boar according to this concept. So, but it depends. But sometimes neutral animals can become enemies. I believe it's the rabbit was introduced to Australia, and rabbits are cool out here, but when they become an invasive species, they devastate the environment. You have to cull them. So it's not always the same thing. So, but in general, we shouldn't hunt out these. If they're not harming you, don't harm them. Now, the enemies, yes, definitely. If a snake comes into your house, or scorpion, or a poisonous tarantula or something, you have to take measures, either to kill them or to remove them. You have to do something. You can't just let them go. I mentioned before the neutral animals too, like they can become really deadly too, like the field mouse. But when they come into your house and they spread their feces all over, they eat your food, it's a threat to your life, and you have to take action. And now about the potential enemies, the real enemies, it's one thing if a lion or a tiger enters a village and starts harming people, but when a human being puts on his hunting jacket and becomes all manly with a giant gun and goes out in the forest to kill them, that's not. Even though that animal is an enemy by nature, but if that animal is not doing the enemy action, we shouldn't go out of our way to go and kill it. At least that's what the yogis believe. I know that there's a whole hunting bunch of people who would disagree with me on that. But if you ask the Buddhist monk or you ask a tantric monk, this is what they'll tell you. No, we shouldn't hunt out the enemies, even though then they are by their nature, they're deadly. But when they're in their own habitat, there's no need to go take special measures to kill them. So this is the idea. So it's flexible. A neutral animal sometimes can become an enemy. An enemy animal sometimes is really neutral in the sense that they're not harming us, and the other ones are the born friends. And at times of extreme need may be possible, but some yogis would say, okay, I'll die first. I'm not gonna go that route, But now the question comes, and we can talk a long time about these animals, because sometimes, like a deer, their population is growing. I heard there's 17 million in the US. So what to do about that? Should they be culled or like that? There's the bison in one park is now getting too much. Should they be culled? And so it's sometimes it's a difficult question. But even more difficult, we're going to go into it now. So now we're going to say about, before we go into the human nature, we'll answer this question, the pest, because that's what brought us here, the pest in the garden, what to do. So my answer is, it depends. It depends. If you're really dependent on that garden to supply your food, then you have every right, to take every method to kill them, because you're not going to eat. But suppose the garden is an ornamental garden, or it's kind of a hobby. Then you can say, you don't have the absolute right to kill it, or you can say, well, some people say, well, I let the animals, they have their share, I get my share, and I'm okay with that. So that's one approach that you can take. Or one approach that I took one year was, I found that these bugs would always come, they would devastate my bush beans every, and I used to like to grow them in other places, and they were easy to grow. Green beans to grow on the bush, but in my place they don't go. So then what I did, I found us pole beans, and they were very resistant. I've grown them for many years, so I just replaced. So it's up to you. It depends. But if the pest is, you really don't need that food so much, and you can live with a little bit of loss, then suck it up, take it. It won't be such a bad thing. But if they really, if you really put a lot of work into it, they take it every day. And sometimes I understand. And also one other thing about farming, whenever you farm, you're going to kill the creature. You dig the soil. Oh, there was an earthworm. I didn't know. So that is not against Ahimsa. But some religions, the Jain religion, they very strict in their idea of Ahimsa, so they wouldn't till the soil, but they would pay other people to do it for them. So it's not a solution. So the real solution is to understand, the real solution here is to understand the basic concept. We're not inflicting harm with purpose. When you inflict harm, I really wanted to see that earthworm cut in half and squirm and and die, and I get joy from that. Is against Ahimsa. But if you're in your normal course of being a human, by accident, some creature gets harmed, it's not a violation. Now, ants, if you just go out in the street and see one ant running across it, you just want to step it, that's not right. But if an ant comes in your house and is eating the food and making spread it, you have the right to stop those insects. So it's like that. So if you understand that concept, that we don't do it purposely to inflict harm, then you can deal with many of these questions. And now we're going to get to the more difficult questions, even the questions of humans. So now with humans, with animals, we got 3 categories. But humans, they only fall into 2. Either they should be treated as friends or enemies. In the sense that friends, I mean that we're definitely not going to, we're never going to think of killing a human or taking up arms against another human. It's just, it's not in the, except there is an exception though. But normally this is the way a yogi, a monk, ethical practitioner of spirituality will follow, that we're not going to assault our friends. But enemies are there. And according to ancient yogis, they defined enemies. They had 6 types. I'll explain them here. It was called atatai in Sanskrit. So they said, who are the enemies? Those that take your land. Because, you know, especially in the old days, that you're farming on your land, and that means that they want you to starve. So they abduct your spouse. They set fire to your property. They attack you with a weapon. They steal your property. They poison your food. So we have a right to use force against them. If let's say you live in a country and it's invaded by people, you didn't go to their place, they came to your place. So what should we do? Are we going to lay down? You know, are we going to sing songs and welcome them? No, you can take up arms. The yogi will say that. But some people say, no, I'll never take up arms. Okay, you can say that. But an ethical yogi will say, I can take up arms. So that's the thing. But other humans should be treated as friends. So sometimes our friends become our enemies in a way, and then we have to see what to do. But there's always a nuance in that. And I'm going to tell one little story. I think I have time for that. Once there was a village, I guess in India, and they were troubled by a snake. The snake was hissing and biting, and it was a menace. You know, people were afraid to go out on the street. So one yogi came into that village, and they said, they confided with him. They said, can you do anything about this? So this yogi was quite a developed being, and he was able to even converse with the animals. So he went to that snake and he told them, you're causing too much problem. Don't do this here. You don't bite the people. Don't harass the people, please. So then the snake learned what to do, and the yogi left their village. He came back, and then he met the villagers, and he said, well, how's everything going? They said, yeah, it's fine now. No, we don't have any problem. But then he double-checked on the snake, and he found the snake lying on the side of the road, all beat up and scarred, and half alive only. And then the yogi said, well, what happened? He said, yeah, I stopped being menacing, and then these little schoolboys come up and they got me by the tail and they're swinging me around and throwing me against the rocks and like this and that. And then the yogi said, look, I told you not to bite, but I didn't tell you not to hiss. So that's the story. There's a nuance with that. So anyway, this is the yogic idea of how to deal with some of these questions. So it's not always the same answer. It's not that, oh, this is a yogi and that yogi will lay down in front, if someone's, and even I've been told, if you know someone's about to strike you, you don't wait for that. You strike first, even, which is against, someone said, turn the other cheek, whatever. That may be, some people may say that, but if there's a real enemy, then you have the right to treat them like an enemy. But we should treat everyone as much as we can as a friend and make them our friends, even if they're our enemies. We should do our best. But if we fail, then force can be used. But remember, when force is applied, it's not applied to create harm. Harm means to stop the physical, mental, and spiritual progress of somebody. But we didn't do that. That was not the purpose. The purpose was only to defend ourselves. So this is an interpretation of Ahimsa that we can live with, because, like I mentioned, the Jains, they were overzealous in it. But then it becomes hypocritical. Oh, well, I can't farm the soil, but I can pay you to do it. That's not the way out. So you have to take a nuanced view, and then you deal with some of these questions.